Have you noticed that the most dangerous ones aren't always those who raise their voices, but those who act in silence without asking for permission? And that the kindest people are often the first to be forgotten? We live in a society that teaches you to be good, but doesn't prepare you to be strong. It rewards you when you adapt, but punishes you when you dare. Since childhood, you learn that the right thing is to yield, smile, accept. But no one ever tells you that, in the real world, it's those who assert themselves who survive. What if I told you that evil isn't the opposite of virtue, but a reflection of raw courage? That the bad guys win not because they're wicked, but because they're not afraid to get their hands dirty? That's an uncomfortable but essential truth. And Nietzsche, with his sharp philosophy, didn't come to comfort you. He came to wake you up. From a young age, we're shaped by a system that values obedience, docile behavior, and an easy smile. We're taught to yield, to avoid conflict, to please. The morality we're handed, as noble as it seems, also has a disciplinary function. It tames us, trims us, fits us into place. And those who don't fit are seen as threats. This pedagogy of goodness has less to do with virtue, and more to do with control. Nietzsche called this the morality of the weak, a moral code created by the powerless to domesticate the powerful. To him, traditional ethics are not neutral, they hide resentment. Those who can't exercise power create rules so that no one else can either. And so, strength becomes a sin and submission is rewarded as virtue. But is being good really always right? The problem is that this imposed goodness distances us from authenticity. Being good often means denying your own strength, hiding legitimate impulses, suppressing intense desires. When forced, goodness stops being a virtue, it becomes a mask. And the danger of masks is that one day you forget who's behind them. The price of social acceptance is often the loss of one's soul. Being strong, on the other hand, is not about being cruel, it's about being whole. It's having the courage to exist without asking for permission, to think unfiltered thoughts, to act with responsibility but without fear. Society may never teach you that, but life demands it. As Nietzsche said, become who you are. True strength begins when you stop trying to please and start living with truth. Many people take pride in never entering conflict, in always yielding, in being a good person. But what looks like virtue is often just well-dressed fear. Fear of upsetting others, fear of rejection, fear of facing the discomfort of confrontation. Kindness that avoids friction at all costs rarely comes from courage, it almost always stems from the need for acceptance. And that, far from noble, is self-preservation disguised as generosity. Avoiding conflict is not an automatic sign of wisdom. In many cases, it's just chronic cowardice. A person dissolves into others' desires, suppresses their own opinion, lives in the shadow of political correctness. And the result? A life that slowly fades. Those who never assert themselves leave no mark. Those who never say no lose themselves in the process of being loved. There's a brutal difference between being good by choice and being good out of fear. The first is noble, the second tragic. The true value of kindness lies in the freedom to say yes, and still say no when necessary. Kindness that doesn't know how to take a stand becomes a burden, not a strength. It protects others but abandons itself. And over time that turns into resentment. Courage, on the other hand, doesn't need to shout. It simply exists. It allows you to say what you think even with a trembling voice. It allows you to take a stand even when being judged. Because someone who fears being hated will never truly be free. As Seneca said, the free soul does not fear contempt. True kindness needs courage, or it's just polite fear. There's an uncomfortable truth that many good people prefer to ignore. The world doesn't reward intentions, it rewards results. And those who understand this early on play by different rules. While the good focus on appearing fair, the bad move forward boldly, even if they break conventions. It's not that they're necessarily cruel, they just aren't afraid to break what others are still trying to preserve. The evil many fear is, in many cases, simply uncensored courage. A courage that doesn't apologize for existing, that doesn't bow to public opinion, that doesn't seek permission to act. People labeled as bad are often those who said yes to their raw power, even if it made others uncomfortable. And discomfort, let's face it, is a great sign of authenticity. While the good wait for recognition, the bad do what needs to be done. They understand that the world is not a moral temple, it's a field of force, where the one who acts wins, not the one who justifies. Goodness, when not accompanied by firmness, becomes impotence. And impotence, no matter how ethical it may seem, doesn't move the world. The point isn't to become bad, but to integrate the part of yourself you were taught to repress. The shadow, as Jung would say, contains everything you are but refuse to accept. Denying it is living half a life. Embracing it makes you whole. Only then do you stop being a promise of virtue and become someone capable of transforming reality. The image most people have of success is peaceful, almost magical. Effort rewarded, merit recognized, justice at the top. But that image is a comforting illusion. Success in reality is a silent battlefield. Invisible to distracted eyes, but brutal for those who dare enter. And in that terrain, the naive are the first to fall, precisely because they don't understand that the rules are different there. Nietzsche saw life not as a question of morality, but as a clash of forces. Those who insist on living as if a fair judge awaits will be disappointed. The real world doesn't punish the unjust as effectively as it punishes the weak. And that hurts. But the pain of waking up is smaller than the pain of staying deluded. Because naivety is not a virtue, it's vulnerability. Those who win in this game aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the most aware of the game. The ones who know when to speak. And when to stay silent. When to yield. And when to crush. It's a war of perception, not just of effort. And the battlefield doesn't announce when it begins, it already has. It's just that many people still believe they're in a classroom. It's not about abandoning ethics, but understanding the terrain where they'll be applied. Goodness that doesn't understand the logic of the field it's in will be swallowed. Evil that understands it but doesn't master it will be corrupted. But the one who sees clearly can act strategically. And only then does success stop being a miracle and become a consequence. Since ancient times, humans have been driven by something beyond survival. An inner force that seeks to grow, to dominate, to transform, not out of cruelty but from vital impulse. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Not as a desire to subjugate others, but as the impulse to affirm oneself in the world. It's the hidden engine behind creation, overcoming intense existence. To deny this will is like fighting gravity, useless and exhausting. The problem is that our moral culture demonizes it. It teaches that wanting too much is selfish, that asserting oneself is violence, that seeking power is sinful. Thus, we tame human potential, disguising ambition with guilt, courage with shyness. We create people who look good on the outside, but are frustrated on the inside. Those who accept their will to power don't become tyrants, they become lucid. They realize there's strength within that doesn't need to be suppressed, only directed. Instead of being sheep waiting to be chosen, they become the sculptors of their own lives. That takes courage because it means taking responsibility for everything you are, including your instincts. The will to power is raw, yes, but that's exactly why it can be refined. And when refined, it becomes creation, leadership, movement. As Spinoza said, desire is the essence of man. Repressing that essence makes us sick. Embracing that strength without masks or guilt is the first step to shaping the world instead of just reacting to it. The desire to be loved is natural. It comes from childhood, from the need to belong, from the will to please. But when that desire becomes dependency, it weakens action. Because those who live to be loved start avoiding anything that could cause rejection, and in doing so lose authenticity. The search for love, if unbalanced, turns a person into a reflection of what others expect, rather than who they truly are. Meanwhile, those labeled as bad often operate by another logic. They don't seek acceptance, they seek respect. And respect, unlike love, is born of strength. Not brute strength, but the strength of posture, of clarity, of not making concessions when it violates your principles. They understand that being feared doesn't necessarily mean inspiring terror, but being someone you don't mess with, someone whose presence draws a line. This contrast is brutal. The good want to please. Je bad impose. One asks for permission, the other carves their own path. And more often than not, it's the second who moves forward. Because the real world responds less to affection and more to force. Love is beautiful but unstable. It oscillates, changes, wears down. But respect, when earned through integrity and firmness, is lasting. It's not about choosing between being loved or feared. The real question is, which of these needs is controlling you? Those who live for external approval become hostages to the instability of others. Those who learn to rely on themselves become free. As Machiavelli taught, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The balance between the two may be ideal, but strength almost always comes first. There are moments in life when acting with coldness is more ethical than getting lost in empathy. Because important decisions, especially those involving leadership, justice, or survival, require clarity, not emotional confusion. Emotional kindness, when poorly measured, paralyzes. It makes us hesitate, overthink, delay the inevitable. Rational cruelty, as harsh as it may seem, acts with precision. It doesn't wound for pleasure but out of necessity. Making unpopular decisions is part of the path for those building something meaningful. A leader who tries to please everyone doesn't lead, they dissolve. History is full of empires built on hard choices. Cutting ties, firing people, ending cycles, saying no. And those actions, though they may seem cruel, often save more than the kindness that delays and corrodes. Moral hesitation is a slow poison. Those who try to always do the right thing end up trapped in a maze of doubt and omission. The right thing is often not the kindest, it's the most functional, the fairest in the long term, the one most faithful to reality. Emotion connects us to others. But reason is what keeps us standing when the world tightens. Of course, it's not about glorifying inhuman coldness. It's about recognizing that sometimes, feeling less is what allows you to do more. Anyone who's had to make a tough decision knows. The heart aches, but the mind must lead. As Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, said, "What is not good for the hive, is not good for the bee." Sometimes, being effective is the greatest act of love you can offer. Nietzsche was never a fan of gratuitous evil. What he fought fiercely was hypocritical morality, the kind that pretends to be good while hiding resentment, envy, and fear. He saw traditional morals as a mechanism for castrating human vitality, a set of rules designed to keep the different under control. The true enemy wasn't evil, but virtue disguised as a lie. To Nietzsche, the Übermensch or Overman is one who transcends this game, who doesn't need to appear good to be real, who creates their own ethics, based on inner strength, authenticity, and responsibility, who is not measured by others' approval, but by what they can uphold within themselves. A being who doesn't seek to justify but to express. This moral transcendence requires brutal courage, because abandoning inherited values is like leaving behind familiar ground. It's looking in the mirror with no guarantees, no compliments, no applause. It's admitting that you are indeed capable of dark things, and still consciously choosing what you want to be. The ethics of the Übermensch are not kind, but they are honest. Contrary to popular belief, Nietzsche didn't worship tyrants, he cultivated wholeness. People who have both light and shadow, instinct and awareness, desire and discernment. People who don't hide behind moral masks to appear acceptable. Because in the end, as he wrote, he who fights with monsters must be careful not to become one. True greatness lies in knowing the monster, and still choosing to be human. At some point, you'll have to choose between pleasing everyone and fulfilling your purpose. And that choice is not symbolic, it's practical, daily, uncomfortable. Because real success, the kind that breaks norms and shakes systems, inevitably attracts criticism. Those who stand out are always inconvenient. They are remembered, but also judged, distorted, hated. And it takes real courage not to hide from that. Those who fear others' judgment become slaves to approval. They constantly shape-shift, adapt, explain themselves. But the cost of that acceptance is high. You might be liked, but you'll never be unforgettable. Because the impact of someone who leaves a mark doesn't lie in softness, it lies in firmness. And firmness often hurts the eyes of those who only see through the filter of political correctness. The courage to be hated comes from a deep understanding. Rejection does not define you. It only reveals the discomfort your presence causes in places you never truly belonged. And that's okay. Success demands a thick emotional skin, not to become numb, but to stay whole. Integrity is not about making everyone like you. It's about staying true to yourself. Even when everyone wishes you were someone else. Nietzsche said, "He who cannot free himself from the opinion of others still does not possess himself." That freedom is rare and therefore powerful. When you reach that place of wholeness, the attacks don't stop. But they lose their power. Because you're no longer trying to convince anyone, you're too busy creating, living, transforming. And that, in itself, is a revolution. There is a type of victory that doesn't go through the altar of purity, it walks the rough ground of reality. So-called bad people, or rather people who aren't afraid to deal with the dirty side of the game, often win because they're willing to do what the good avoid. They don't ask morality for permission, don't wait to be understood, don't tremble in the face of disapproval. They act and pay the price without tears. It's not that these people are superior, but they're more lucid about the nature of the world. They understand that life is not a moral tribunal, it's a battleground of clashing forces. And where there's conflict, there's friction, confrontation, hard choices. Those who hesitate, waiting for the right time, lose space to those who get their hands dirty without fear, and then wash them strategically. Nietzsche didn't applaud the filth, but he didn't hide it either. He invites us to see the truth without anesthetic. Those who understand darkness learn to use light with awareness. Morality that denies the shadow becomes naive. Ethics that recognize it become powerful. Only those who have seen the abyss can clearly choose the path they want to walk. Greatness doesn't lie in never getting dirty, but in knowing why and how to get dirty. And still remaining lucid. Because in the end, the difference between a tyrant and a wise person isn't the power they have, but what they do with it. And the first step toward that wisdom is to stop pretending the dirt doesn't exist. It does. And those who fear it end up serving those who don't. The world is not kind to good souls with fragile spirits. It tests, pressures, pushes. And those who don't understand this end up confusing submission with virtue. Nietzsche didn't want you to be cruel. He wanted you to be whole. To step out of the role of moral victim. And take the lead in your own existence. Because in the end, only those who face the brutal truth of the world can act with true awareness within it. So now I ask you, how far has your kindness taken you? Has it protected you? Or erased you? Are you living an authentic life? Or an approved existence? If this content stirred something in you, leave a comment. Tell me, at what point in your life were you most afraid of being hated? And if you want to keep going deeper, there's another video here on the screen that'll challenge you even more. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The journey into yourself is only just beginning.